Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast, where we talk about philosophy. And we try to explore that together, understand what exactly philosophy is, what it can do for us, how we can use it in our world for our own benefit, to reach our highest goals and understand and address our most significant blocks or problems, and then with all that understanding, bring that all together to understand how we should approach philosophy itself. How do we do philosophy? What's the way you do it? Okay, we've been exploring that. We've been recognizing that, hey, to understand that, not just do you have to answer those questions, you're going to have to also apply those questions to what philosophy isn't. What isn't philosophy? Okay, what's the other way of understanding philosophy, or what are the other ways of understanding philosophies that are prevalent in our world? And how does it differ from true philosophy? Okay, so we can distinguish how that kind of thing, how does it affect us? How does it affect us having a bad understanding of philosophy? The things we might hear from people like, this is my philosophy, to refer to an opinion. And how much does an opinion differ from true philosophy? Which, according to what we are reading and seeing for ourselves, is to do with something called the realm of being, and isn't a my philosophy at all, but is a the philosophy. It is an objective thing. How different is that? It couldn't be more different. They are literally worlds apart. You could understand the realm of being as another world that exists, is necessary for our existence, and we are in some way because we have mind, allowing us to access that realm, understand the principles or paradigms or the ideas upon which our lives are based, which we aim to do through the Logos. That's our method there. Okay, so when we talk about what philosophy is, we have to talk about what it isn't. When we talk about how it affects us, well, how does that other idea of philosophy that you get from people, maybe clever people who have YouTube channels based on their political opinions that use philosophy to try and hurt people or make people feel bad or justify slavery or subjugation, or hierarchies in which there are oppressed people. There are a lot of people who use philosophy for that reason. Or they use philosophy to try and stop others from understanding important things. You want to understand how to live in a better world? You can't. You're not smart enough. Look at my philosophy terms. I can talk about Marxism and socialism and empiricism. Look, how many isms do you know? You don't know them? Well, then you can't do philosophy. So therefore, shut up and accept the oppression, or accept a less than ideal world. Okay, this is another way of using the word philosophy, but it's not the right word. It's not the right name. We've been exploring in the text that we've been reading, Plato's Parmenides, the importance of naming. That's one of the big questions. We've seen that Parmenides gives an ultimate philosophy, his philosophy of the self, from himself, as a way of explaining the dialectic, which is our method, the way of using the Logos. And he concludes, said, by the way, one of the big puzzles is, what is the significance of naming the ultimate, naming the destiny of man, naming the self? Can it be named? And what way can it be named? How important is that? So we've been carrying with us in our inventory as philosophical adventurers this question: what is the significance of names? Well, one way which we can wonder about that question is the name philosophy. Can that name be misused? Can it be used to something other than what philosophy is? As a way of confusing people or silencing people or oppressing people or excluding people from the game of philosophy. Philosophy is for all of us. It's our birthright. It's our human quest and it's our human task. It's the human game. It's the best game in town. Some say it's really the only game in town. If you understand all activities we do are activities because we think they will help us reach our good, thumbs up. In which case, well, what is the good? What is the ultimate good? What's the good to which all of the individual goods are moving? Well, that would be understanding the good, not a good. A good at eating healthy food, a good at, getting a nice job or being in a good relationship. What is the good to which all of them serve? Well, that is a question about the, which means you're not in the world of examples, but the world of the ideal or the paradigm, the realm of being. To understand what philosophy is, we're looking at our friend Socrates and his teacher Parmenides. How are they explaining philosophy? Well, he kind of lays it out for us. Philosophy is to move from the world of particulars, your senses, to the realm of being. A different realm in which these things that we see examples of beauty, examples of justice, examples of things that are like each other or unlike each other, those principles have their own existence in that realm of being. Well, what does that mean? It means it's there for us whenever we want to access it, whenever we're ready to access it. But it's also universal. It's not exclusive. It's not about excluding people. It's about including people and bringing them with us on the journey, the human journey, to know, what does Parmenides call it? The truth. And we have some great quotes like this that summarize philosophy. We've been collecting great quotes to take with us, to help us. Collect thyself together by exercising more in that way which appears to be useless to the multitude and is called by them empty talk. For if you do not, while you are still young, the truth will utterly elude you. Socrates. This is something said to Socrates. So we want to know, what is that exercise? How do we do it? Because we're interested in the truth. How does that differ from how the name philosophy is used in our world at this time, currently? Well, is it about truth or is it about my truth, my opinion, my perspective? It's not about understanding knowledge and wisdom of truth. It's about opinion and perspectives, quite often, which is a hurdle we have to overcome. But understanding the two different kinds of names, the true name and its distortion or its reflection or its misuse, the positive and the negative, which is something we've been doing all the way along, then maybe we can gain more insight into why Parmenides says that many call it empty talk. Empty talk. Is it worth getting into philosophy, learning the Logos, mastering the dialectic, in order to experience the realm of truth and being in an experience we call knowledge that we're seeing in the text? That's called knowledge. But also we get there through understanding. So when we do get there, we'll have a wonderful and interesting combination of both understanding and knowledge together. What could that be called? I don't know, but that's one of the questions we have, which is, in what way can we know thyself if the self is beyond even the realm of being? And in what way can we have a logos or an understanding of that? So how does understanding and knowledge apply to the ultimate beyond the realm of being? These are the questions we have with us from our reading of Parmenides so far. However, in terms of philosophy, that's kind of a step higher. That's Parmenides dialectic. But To get into philosophy, we start with Zeno's dialectic, which is applying that same method. The logos is some sort of paradigm, intellectual, in other words, understandable, and intelligible, in other words, able to be directly experienced in a higher state of consciousness, which is important. Why? Well, because it allows you a way of confirming directly in your own experience that which you're developing through understanding, which distinguishes it from theories about the physical world. Okay, modern science is about theories, inferring or imagining what the principles might be, what the laws of the natural world are, in order to explain our physical senses. So we start with the many, our physical senses, the particulars, and we try and move up. It's a bottom-up sort of movement. To guess, infer, educated guesses as best we can, but those theories change as we gain new insight, gain new physical experiences, maybe come up with new possibilities for ways of explaining the particulars, but it's a bottom up, or induction we call it. You're inducing a theory to explain the particulars. Okay, that's different from philosophy, which is more of a top-down. Yes, we start in the same place because we're human beings looking at physical worlds, physical expressions of things in our physical world with our physical senses, but we gain help from people who have made the journey to a higher realm of being in which you can directly experience those principles. So our understanding serves a purpose of preparing our mind to confirm in direct experience those very principles and paradigms that we are discovering. So it's a kind of top-down. It's not inconsistent. Once we discover the logos, and as we go, we're discovering it more and more, we're adding more and more to the ultimate principle, the theory of everything, you could call it, which is called the logos. And we can see it play out in our world. We can see it in our relationships. We can see it manifest in our blocks. We can see it as the spiritual quest. We could also see it in other patterns, so long as it is a intelligent or understandable, intelligible, knowable, hierarchical order that exists in nature, like geometry or astronomy or music theory, mathematics. You'll be able to recognize the logos in those things as well. So yes, it does give you a better way of understanding the physical world because you're seeing the logos everywhere. Why? Because it's a top-down emanation or manifestation of the logos reflecting into all the different realms of reality. That's the basic principle of philosophy. Now, what's wonderful about that is this isn't a belief. It's not a theory. It's not one philosophy among many, which is why we have to be careful with the word philosophy, because the way it's used at the moment is, philosophy just means opinion. Therefore, there are many philosophies. There are Bill's philosophy, there's Aunt Mary's philosophy, there's that hippie who lives up the street, he has his own philosophy, Kant has his philosophy, Hegel, the academics, they pride themselves in reading these old, dusty, boring-ass books that talk about personal philosophies of these old, dead white guys, right? These are all examples of opinions. That's not philosophy. So we have to be careful when we say philosophy because we don't mean it's just one among many. When we say, I study Platonic philosophy, it sounds like we're saying, it's Plato's theory. So we really need to be aware of what the word means. Philos, Sophia. Philos, love of Sophia, wisdom. Okay? We really got to know what love means because is it having something or is a love a desire for something? Do you desire something you love? Can you desire that which you have already? Okay, so we've got to do some work on what exactly love means. But what does Sophia mean? Is wisdom opinion? Well, it's easy to see on the surface that opinion and beliefs and image thinking are different from wisdom. However, does wisdom sit greater than, higher than, more hierarchically important than understanding and knowledge? Could we develop, like we've been doing with the Logos, a hierarchical order of cognitive functions? Hey, you're moved by colors and shapes? I heard that expression the other day. I thought it was funny. Someone was complaining about people who who are easily manipulated, and they say, oh, they're just moved by colors and shapes. Image thinking, we might call that. Or above that, maybe prejudices. There's a bit more involved in a prejudice, even though it's not a true opinion, it's a false belief. Maybe you could have above that scientific beliefs. Above that, we have this dianoia, a kind of understanding. So scientific beliefs might be the highest use of beliefs, only using the senses. Then we have understanding or dianoia, which applies to the realm of being. How do we understand what beauty itself is, what justice itself is, and how these ideas relate to each other? And also, what must exist for these ideas to have their own independent selfhood, for there to be a knowing, knowable, intelligent, intelligible spiritual world? Above that, do we have something called nous, that we call in English knowing? This is the direct experience of those things, which is something unique to philosophy that isn't in the lower levels, which is direct confirmation. You are it, you unite with it as a way of confirming for yourself those things you have developed through the Logos, through understanding. Okay, that can also be called the mystical experience, because it's not a physically perceived thing, it's a thing perceived through a sense of the mind called ousia, which you could call a sixth sense. Plato calls it the eye of the mind. Okay, this is another importance of the word name, of the idea of naming things. Will you be able to recognize you have this sense that is able to perceive a different realm if you don't have a name for it? Maybe not, which is why we are importing Greek words that we lack in English, like ousia. So that's why philosophy is so wonderful and important. You can actually confirm it's not just an opinion. It's not just a theory. There are kinds of theories or hypotheses used, which are what if this is the case? What if there is a justice self? What if there was a realm of being? In fact, that was the first exercise we were encouraged to do by Parmenides. Make a what if universe. What if the many beings exist in the way that we're saying that they are? What would follow? What kind of universe would you be in? And one of the biggest objections to getting into philosophy is either there is no such thing as the realm of being, or, okay, there is, we've had all these experiences in yogas and meditations and spiritual traditions that have gone back thousands and thousands of years. There are near-death experiences, there are drug experiences, there are experiences in dreams, there are all these things that great athletes have jumped into, which they call being in the zone or being outside of themselves. Okay. And there is a similarity in how they are described that point to a model or a paradigm or an objective reality to what they're experiencing. They're all not just crazy, as we might have thought 100 years ago, before the internet, before we explored other spiritual cultures in the West. All right, and very the old-fashioned, what is it? Buttoned up, oppressed 1920s up to the 60s. Okay, we might have called all that crazy. Oh, that's just crazy talk. We don't think that way because it would be too irrational and unfair. You'd be completely lacking integrity to dismiss all of these things, and all through human history, as well as the greatest minds ever, like Socrates and Plato and Parmenides and so on. So the objection might be, okay, I'm not crazy. I'm not a complete tyrant that I'm going to reject all of this evidence. So there is some sort of realm of being. But what's the biggest objection? Parmenides says this: the following is the greatest puzzle. Even if following the proof through many elaborate details from one practiced and experienced and with natural talent, even then, he who contends that the idea selves are unknowable may still remain unpersuaded. There might be a realm of being, but we can't get there. So give up. Do something else. Dig a hole. All right? Go make money. Something like that. There is no way for us to access it. Those times, those many times that have been documented and whole spiritual traditions have been built on those at times, that's all just flukes. It's a big one, especially in the West. Okay, and Socrates had that way of thinking. And he recognized how it limited him from doing philosophy. And we've just gone through the introduction where Parmenides does his best to help him out. Point out, hey, by the way, it's not personal, son. He doesn't say, soon you will be the great Socrates and you will laugh at the fact that you might take this personally. He didn't say that. He just said, hey, it's not personal. It's the greatest human puzzle. And there are other puzzles that come up if you get into it. But you have to keep those puzzles in mind and get into the game anyway. You have to keep an open mind, have some level of trust in us when we say that it's possible, so that you can begin to study the ideas, because philosophy is not about the physical world. It includes the physical world. It explains the physical world. It does use the physical world as a way of jumping into philosophy. The ladder, as we call it, there's something called the Penrose principle. Any physical way of explaining a physical system, like understanding music or understanding geometry or mathematics, requires something beyond it to begin. So Penrose principle is no system is completely self-contained and complete. It's either complete but requires something from above, or it's self-contained but it's not complete. It's missing. It won't explain everything. That's a principle that we see in intelligent systems in the physical world. What does that mean? It means that even in the physical world, if we apply ourselves to understanding that, which is a brilliant thing, it's the highest faculty we have in the physical world, our understanding, we will see that anything you get into, if you seek to master it completely with complete excellence and integrity, has a ladder up. What does that mean? When you get to the end of it, you'll realize, oh, actually, to master Euclid's complete system of two-dimensional geometry, I did need that one principle from three-dimensional geometry, which is a higher dimension. Okay, I need to get into that. I can't say it's complete and self-contained. Equally so, you'll realize that in mastering three-dimensional geometry, you require something from the fourth dimension to exist. Now, fourth dimension in philosophy is something of the mind. Okay, in the three-dimensional world is characterized by time and space. The fourth dimension, you're in philosophy now. So, how do we summarize all that? What's philosophy about? Being. What eternally, immortally exists as the principles, the paradigms, the foundation for all of our particulars. That is intelligent, understandable, and intelligible, knowable. Allowing humans the possibility to complete their purpose and quest, which is to use intelligence, understanding, the Logos, through the method of the dialectic to understand the realm of being and directly confirm it in knowing. So we have this quote from Parmenides that talks about the significance of this. Here's Socrates, a quote from him. I want to solve the following puzzle about the ousia self, being that is woven together into the idea selves and demonstrate in detail about the ideas which we, what? Grasp. How? By the activity of the logos. We grasp it. We can know it. We went through a whole section on truth and knowing and how all of the ideas are together in some way and they're all the object of knowledge. So it's a single reality called being, which is a puzzle, okay, which is Socrates' puzzle coming in, really. How can there be a knowledge experience of likeness, or you have that experience or confirmation and knowing of beauty, and also someone else has one and they say it's justice? How can they both be real and of the realm of being if it's just one experience? It's a puzzle. How can justice itself and beauty itself be the same if they're different? Same and different. You could say things like, well, would you say justice, the ideal, the pure idea of justice, the living being of justice, the eternal, immortal living being of justice that's knowable, would you say it's ugly? Oh, no, you would never say that. So there would be some beauty there. By the way, if you saw beauty and you realized it, would it be bad? Think about it in your everyday life. You saw a beautiful woman, but then you found out that she was a sociopath or she killed puppies or something. Would she be less beautiful? Is there necessarily some connection with beauty and good in some way? And in the idea realm and being? So they are connected. But how can they be themselves independent and different in themselves, but also one experience of a single knowledge experience? We call that the one and many. Well, it's one example of a one and many problem. One and many problem pokes its head up in a lot of places in philosophy. And that's Socrates' thing. How can he said he came in, hey Parmenides, I want to know, how can there be likeness self and unlikeness self, both as a single experience in the realm of being? If they're opposites, how can you call unlikeness likeness? Now, he says, I don't care about the physical world because that's obvious. I'm unlike you in that I'm young. I'm like you in that I'm a philosopher. Here's the one many problem. Same issue. I have many parts. I've got a left side and a right side, but I'm one person and we're all one. Like there's 7 of us here and I'm one person. So it's not interesting. It's not fantastic to say in the physical world we can be both. But in the realm of being, how can they be both? Good question, Socrates. So this is one of the questions we have. How can you be both same likeness and unlikeness, or both one and many? How can you have beauty and justice as two different ideas and therefore many, but them being one experience of knowledge? Puzzle. Take it with us. As a philosopher, we develop questions. We want to be question havers, right? It's more important than having the answer is having a question. Why? It can open you up to the quest of the logos and the direct experience of knowing. So, what does Zeno say about this? The many are ignorant that without this discursive procession, dialectic, through all the beings, it happens to be impossible for the intellect, nous, to hold on to the truth. Another important thing. We talked about ways in which people have had a glimpse, near-death experiences, yoga, meditation, breath work, drugs, dreams, displays of energy, maybe in extreme displays of devotion or prayer. Sometimes people have claimed to have this glimpse into the divine. But can you hold on to it if you don't get there through the logos, through the dialectic? Maybe you know someone who's maybe had an experience, but they hadn't got there through understanding, through philosophy, and therefore they misunderstand it. Oh, it's a confirmation that whatever my religion is true. Happens often. It will confirm whatever beliefs they have, give more power to their ignorance or their false beliefs. if they haven't done the work on number one, removing those false beliefs, which is applying the logos to your false beliefs, but also developing an understanding of that which you are going to experience. This is philosophy. So, what does that mean? Well, what must exist? What kind of a reality are we in as human beings? You and me, right here, finding ourselves on this planet in this point of time. We're not going to be around forever. This planet isn't going to be around forever. Humanity might not be around for much longer if we don't wake up to philosophy in the logos. So it might not be around for very much longer. It's definitely not going to be. Well, I don't know. Is humanity going to be around forever? That's a good question. But we find ourselves here. What does it say about us and where we find ourselves? The game that we're in, if there is such a thing as a realm of being. What does that say? Isn't it weird? Isn't it curious that we find ourselves here? That the greatest men, the smartest minds, everything in Western thought is but a footnote to Socrates, they say. Well, this is Socrates starting his journey. The first thing he has to wake up to is that there is a realm of being that we have to understand. Parmenides says, okay, but even that's just a precursor. That's just the exercise, preliminary exercises. Because you have to take your understanding and knowledge. Hey, the ultimate spiritual experience of knowing is just a precursor. It ain't the end, says Parmenides to Socrates when Socrates was 19. You have to use them to know the self. What they said back in ancient Greece, know thyself. The destiny of man apparently is to know thyself. We say apparently because we have to trust in that logos until we can, number one, understand it for ourselves. Number two, demonstrate that understanding through the dialectic, which is what? What would follow if there is a destiny of man to know thyself and create that universe? What could you say about it? How does that relate to others? How do those others things relate to each other if the destiny exists? And then how would people relate back to their destiny? How would they do it? And also create a what-if universe if it doesn't exist. You have to do both, the positive and the negative, which is what we've been doing this whole time with philosophy. What is philosophy? What isn't philosophy? How does it affect us? How doesn't it affect us? Or how does it affect us? What would be the negative if you didn't think philosophy was a truth in the realm of being, but just opinions? Positive and the negative. If it does exist and if it doesn't exist. Okay, this is the beginning of young Socrates' journey and the beginning of our journey. So what are we asking? What must it exist what must the reality be that we find ourselves in if there is a realm of being? What does it mean for us? What's worth doing? How are you going to spend your day? If there is a realm of being which is outside of death, immortal, outside of time, timeless, eternal, encompasses everything all at once as a single experience, but also is the paradigm of beauty that we all seek. We're all interested in beauty. It's the paradigm of justice that everyone wants. All nations fight for. Humanity itself could be understood as a quest to see how reality is just. All conflict has been a fight over what is justice, or an idea or an opinion about justice. How would you spend your day if all those things are accessible in a realm called being? What would that mean for us? How did Socrates spend his day? Well, as soon as he read these essays, he got on his bike. He didn't have a bike, so he was a big walk with a bunch of friends to track this guy Zeno down and ask him some tough questions. He had some questions with him in his pocket, ready to fire away. That's what we want to do. Develop questions, polish them up like a gem, like a stone. Get your question in the fewest number of words. Take it with you. Make it sound catchy. Turn it into a song. Turn it into a painting if you like, if you're a painter. All right? But hone it up like a laser beam so you can fire it away at a Zeno or at a Parmenides if you're someone like Socrates. He had a question in his back pocket. He had to go on a big hike to find the guy. This is how he was spending his time, if he was open to the idea that the real beings exist. But he was stuck, of course, because he's new. Yeah, one thing that the dialectic can do is diminish the power of the false beliefs that say the biggest puzzle is, what is it? That we think that the idea selves are unknowable. Not all of us, many of us. And not all the time. Like, we can go through different ways of thinking, different moods, different mindsets. Sometimes you might realize, holy crap, I really feel like the divine is caring for me. There's some synchronicity in my life. There is some connection. Or when I applied myself to understanding myself in the highest way, I realized that there was a way home. But then you might be in a bad mood or a sad mood and realize and think, well, I guess there's nothing important. I guess God doesn't care about me. Different ways of thinking. Parmenides had to use an understanding of the possible ways of thinking about self and the divine to recognize where Socrates was and to approach him. And we are using our understanding of the dialectic to understand Parmenides' function. Did he? What are the four classes? Definition, demonstration, division, synthesis, analysis. Did he define Socrates' problem? Hey, this is your problem, pal. Did he demonstrate it in some way with an example or a metaphor or through questions? Did he go through a set of divisions to show the arguments or what would follow? What would the consequences be if you have this way of thinking, son? And did he allow some sort of pushing the implications, synthesizing those arguments to a conclusion that can be analyzed, so synthesis and analysis, drawn together in a synthesis, and then applied back to that original definition, his way of thinking. What can you say about your way of thinking now that you've seen what follows? What the results must be? Okay, so we can see this is one way of using the dialectic, especially when you have leveled up and you have that level of mastery where you can come back and help others, like Gandalf.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
So all of those things that we have been saying about philosophy can be brought together itself. We have to be open and open to the idea of the realm of being and it being knowable. To get into philosophy, you have to at least be open to it. It helps to have had an experience, but it's not necessary. People can get into it either from an experience or from reasoning. They can see this is the only logical thing that makes sense. I mean, that's why philosophy is so fantastically awesome and beautiful. It's both. It's the pinnacle of understanding. It's the pinnacle of using concepts, ideas, thinking, rationality, order, meaning. Not just dry, but meaningful. It applies to the self. It applies to reality. It applies to the divine. So it's the highest use of understanding, which is, draws people in. Like, finally, someone's using their brain. But it's also draws from our highest experiences that humans have ever had. That highest experience is possible. What people might call enlightenment in Taoism or Buddhism or Hinduism. These experiences are a whole part of it. You've had this experience, good. Now, what are you going to do with it? You want to understand it? You want to make sense of it? You want to see the significance of it? You want to see what results from that experience? What must follow? If this experience is possible, what does it say about us? What does it say about the world? What does it say about our purpose? You want to go into that experience deeper? You want to go beyond that experience? Because there might be some problems if it has an end and it's just an experience. You have these questions about your highest experience? Congratulations, you're a philosopher too.
You're a wizard, Harry.
So either a love of understanding or a love of the highest experiences, both understanding would be understanding, understanding, dianoia, logos, dialectic. Highest experience, knowledge, we call that. Mysticism, we can call that. Spirituality, if you understand the realm of the spirit to be the meaning of the word spirituality. Metaphysics, that which is prior to, necessary for, and beyond the physical world. Metaphysics. So 2 ways in, basically. But it's so brilliant because it's the excellence of both, the mastery of both. You want to throw one in the trash? Of course not. You want to throw your understanding just because you've had a great experience? Throw that in trash? No. Keep both. You want to throw your greatest experiences in the trash just because you've developed a brilliant level of understanding? No. Make it meaningful. Apply it to yourself. Realize that your logos, your understanding, is dialectics on the realm of being. What are these ideas? What must this world be if it exists? If there is a whole different dimension, not just one, but a few ones. Because there is a whole different a kettle of fish, can of worms, a whole different world in seeing that within that single experience of being, there are levels. There is a hierarchical system of ordered levels. What's that? The logos. Just as we have a hierarchical system of ordered levels in the physical world. I'm a musician. You can see the guitar in the back. You can see that the most harmonic notes, the octave, the perfect fifth, and then the perfect fourth. You can hierarchically arrange them. You can understand them mathematically to do with their relationships between their frequencies. And you can understand that those 3 are a kind of triad of mean analogies, geometric, arithmetic, and harmonic mean analogies, mathematically speaking, that are a subclass within the phi ratio, the golden ratio, the archetype of analogy, the logos. Lesser is to greater is to whole. That triad that we've been using all the way through. The golden ratio. If you're interested in art, that idea of the golden ratio, in framing your shots and framing your paintings and designing a story, that must have come up. If you're interested in biology, the fractal golden ratio, sacred geometry, you can see it there. Astronomy, planets and how they're arranged, follows those same 3 mean analogies that arise from the golden one. So what does that mean? Well, that's our claim for the logos. Anything that has a series of terms that can be hierarchically ordered, understandable, exhibits the logos. Not just in the physical world, but also in the realm of being. So maybe you can go into that mystical experience in greater depth. There's a whole philosopher that we can get into later on in the channel if people are interested. Proclus. Just as we saw, there are 3 primary mean analogies, a triad, that give us our musical scale, give us the distances and motion of the planets in our galaxy, solar system. So too has he distinguished there are 3 realms or levels to the realm of being. He calls it the intellectual, the middle one, the intellectual/intelligible, and the top one, the intelligible, which is I think personally is a terrible way of naming things because there's a repetition. Intellectual/intelligible, intelligible, and the words are they're complicated to say and they're long, so I would have named them differently, but int, inge, and inge, that's my way of abbreviating when I write it down. So what? So there is a logos that can be applied even to the mystical. So what are we saying? The logos is necessary not just to understand our physical world, and the problems that play out in our physical world, which are blocks or limits or distortions of that logos. You can also apply it to the greatest mystical experiences. So philosophy takes them both together, and either one can be your doorway in. But And either one we've had at some level. We've all appreciated making sense of something. We've already appreciated understanding something and how important it was to us for something important to us. But also we've had good and bad states of mind. We can recognize that there are states of mind, which means if there are good and bad states of mind that are understandable and objective, like we all know what happy means, we all know what sad means, we all know what angry means, then we should be able to understand them. How? The logos. Through what? The dialectic, which ends up doing what? Hierarchically defining the key terms, hierarchically arranging them within an understandable order. That should be confirmable through direct experience of the idea of the logos in the realm of being. That's philosophy. So, very different from opinions and theories and arguing with people and pushing your political agenda and, justifying. But we can see the negative. People who do use philosophy in a negative way, sometimes they tend to create a distortion of hierarchies. We are better because we're white. We are better because we're rich. Men are better than women. This kind of thing that we see a lot on YouTube and the news and mainstream media to justify untrue hierarchies, unfair, exclusionary, oppressive, tyrannical ways of being. And what's the way that they always use to justify it? It's a natural hierarchy. It's the way it should be. The market is the way it should be. Because rich people are better. They earned it. You're poor because you're dumb. Well, black people deserve to be enslaved by the white race. Or men deserve to tell women what to do. Because it's the way the hierarchical ordering of the terms happen to be. Natural hierarchy. Lobsters are angry, so therefore humans are angry because that's just and if you're angrier, you're going to be the alpha male. Therefore, it's good to be oppressive. So what do we see? The same thing we have to do in everything. See the positive and see what the negative distortion will be. If there is a hierarchical ordering of intelligent, intelligible systems, allowing us to understand music, understand geometry, understand how to level up our states of mind, level up our understanding, see higher levels of reality, function in a more empathetic, caring, beneficial, inclusionary, understanding, harmonious way to all human beings and all the planet. If this is the result of going up that ladder, what's its negative distortion or reflection? What would create the opposite of those things? Less empathetic, less harmonious, less inclusive. Frame it in the, don't say what it's less than, say what it is, okay? If it's less inclusive, it's more exclusionary. If it's less empathetic, it's more cruel. If it's less cooperative and beneficial, it's more tyrannical and harmful. So this would be the results that follow from what? The negative distortion or the misunderstanding of the hierarchies in reality. And do we see that? Do we see people who want to justify cruelness, exclusion, tyrannicalness, war, death, slavery? Everything that we know is objectively bad. Is the only way they ever justify it a misuse of the ordered hierarchies of the logos? We get to enslave you because we're closer to God. That's why we're the royal family. Or that God speaks to me and not you, and because you're not the chosen people. Or you're the wrong color. And hierarchically speaking, here is a graph of different colors from whiteness to blackness. And that's the hierarchy of goodness or godliness. Bullshit. Terrible fucking bullshit. But understandable. In that, it is simply a distortion of the logos. There wouldn't be some sort of appeal. We wouldn't be using it if there wasn't something within us that is looking for hierarchies, is looking for understanding, recognizing that If there has to be some part of us that recognize key terms, orders, hierarchy, development. Penrose principle, right? You keep moving up. Is part of understanding, is part of reality. Something innate to us is looking for that, which is why it can be very appealing to just throw that out without actual understanding. Oh, you're better. Really? I'm better? I'm going to vote for that person. But I haven't done any work. I haven't done the work in mastering the logos, applying it to my life, mastering the dialectic, asking these questions, being puzzled, reading this text. I haven't done any of that work, but I like being told I'm better. By the way, why am I better? People will need a justification. They need it. Why? Because we seek the logos. It's in us. So how do you justify it? Because you're better hierarchically on the order. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm with you. By the way, why is that again? Well, by the way, explain why I don't have to change my way of being and just be harmful, unempathetic, cruel, tyrannical, and get off on that. Explain why I can do that based on a hierarchy, but without me having to do philosophy. Please. Because I'll vote for you if you tell me that. I'll give you my money if you tell me that. This is the cause of all scams. All scams. Religious scams, political scams. Hey, religious scams. Because you're closer to God. You know that. God said to me, I found these ancient texts under a rock. You can't read them, but it's a magical text written by God. Wow. And he says you're better. Really? I didn't even have to do anything? Yeah. I don't have to solve my problems? No. Which means I can play out my problems with greater certainty and authority? Yeah. Which makes me more harmful and more tyrannical? Yeah, you can do that. You don't have to work on your problems or purify your problems. You don't have to perfect yourself. So you can throw away philosophy. Forget it. Oh, cool. By the way, these ancient texts you found under a rock that was written by God and, why? We need that. We need some sort of justification for inaccurate hierarchical order, a distortion of the logos to justify our playing out our worst kinds of behavior. Oppression of people, destruction of the planet, enslavement of other races, extreme wealth inequality, torturing, oppression of women. The list goes on and on. But in philosophy, we look at all of the particulars, the many, and we find the one, many to one, the one many issue. What is common among all of them? What's common? They are all harmful, of course. What else is common? It's a way of being that rejects philosophy. Why? Because philosophy involves understanding the actual logos on how you can remove those harmful ways of being and develop an understanding of what's good. So you don't even have to understand what's good. You can just use your opinions or your prejudices, which are inherited through traditions all the way back to the caveman days. So it's inherited ignorance, or what is called in mythology a family curse. Achilles famously had a family curse. And what's unique, if you get into mythology, one thing that's similar in family curses is that the people who suffer from them not only have a tragic end in the story, but they believe that they're chosen of the gods. They don't have to do any work in uncovering and solving their problems, purification, and understanding and knowing being, perfection. They don't have to do that because their family is special. So we can see that as a commonness. But we can also recognize, a commonness is justifying those harmful ways of being, not through actually doing the work, not an actual hierarchy, but through a bullshit hierarchy. We need a hierarchy. We need some way of understanding how there is development, how there is a system. It's not haphazard. It's not irrational. There is an order. And a hierarchy allows for development as well. We can level up. It would be a boring story if Frodo stayed just as ignorant and oblivious and low level than when he started his journey. Every game you start at a level 1, and well, usually you start level 0 or 1, and you have to go through a development. That's the archetype. So, what happens in philosophy? We develop an understanding of the archetype. And we also develop an understanding of, and an experience of the realm of being. But we also have to push the implications of what follow. What follows if there is a realm of being? What follows for me? What follows for humanity? What follows for my life? What follows for what's meaning? What follows for how I'm going to spend my day? If this is what reaches the good, and everything else I did was because I thought it was good, wouldn't I want to be doing this instead? Or trying to integrate the two? Okay? So if that's the ideal, if that's philosophy, if that's what we're seeing Socrates go through, what we're learning from ourselves, then what's the opposite? We have to do both. Oh, every scammer in human history ever plays the same game, but just misses the logos. So if the logos leads to more understanding, more empathy, more inclusion, you can actually benefit someone, like we're seeing Parmenides with Socrates.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
He can actually benefit, and people are made more good, can be a better caretaker of the world, can find better rational systems in education and justice, can actually solve problems. If that's the ideal, how come we have all this freaking mess? Simple. Just take the logos out.
What?
Just take the logos out. What's that? Well, the only justification for this kind of tyranny is that it has to be this way. We seek a justification, we seek some sort of reasoning, and the reasoning always involves the same thing. There is a hierarchical order in which you, as the oppressor, is above. No logos, no actual understanding. That's what every scammer sells you. All of the grifters that we see populating the internet, they sing the same song. Hey, you're better because you're an alpha, because you're a man, because you're this political party, because you're this religion, because you're this skin color, because you're this level of wealth, because you're a capitalist, because you're a businessman, because you're an entrepreneur. Whatever it is they're selling, they try and target an audience and say, you are better, you are higher on that hierarchical order, therefore your behavior is justified, even if it's tyrannical, even if you're not doing the logos, even if you're not solving problems or developing a perfection within the dialectic. Simple. Why do they sell that lie? Because people want to hear it. They think the actual dialectic is empty talk. It appears to be useless to the multitude and called by them empty talk. It's easier just to stay in your ignorance, they think, which is what? Certainty, the appearance of knowing, the distortion of knowing. Hey, if we talked about the knowledge experience as being wonderful because it can confirm in your direct experience, in your state of mind, that which you're understanding, elevating it from a scientific theory, then that's the positive. What do? We have to see the negative too. What's the negative image, distortion of knowledge? Certainty. The Dunning-Kruger effect. The dumber and more ignorant and harmful you are, the more certain you can be in your ignorance. That's why you remain ignorant. Hey, and when you're little, or you're impressionable, or you're looking for answers, there are some people who get up in front of a stage or in front of a lectern or a pulpit or wherever it is, or just a parent or a teacher, and they seem so certain. Oh, well, let me tell you about women, son. And at that moment, they seem to be certain, and that's where we get our false opinions. Imitation of that crap. Crap because it's a distortion of true knowledge. Does Parmenides say that? No, he doesn't relate. He uses the dialectic to help Socrates develop his own understanding. It's not, hey, let me tell you, or hey, let me give you advice. None of that crap. So that's the significance of seeing the positive and the negative. If it does exist, if it doesn't exist. If knowledge does exist, what follows? Parmenides, philosophy, a true development to a true hierarchical order of self-improvement, of leveling up to the ideals of intelligence, empathy, inclusion, harmony, actually acting beneficial, mastership is what follows if it does exist. If it doesn't exist, you're going to do that as well. What happens? You only have the appearance of that. If true knowledge doesn't exist in the realm of being as a truth, what follows? Oh, then it's just a fiction. It's just the appearance. It's just a perception. And we have a quote from Parmenides that says, we haven't kept it as a quote, but we need it up there. So let's bring it up. From the opening, which we read last time, which talked about it was the appearance that they're saying something important and worthwhile that made them so believable. Yeah. There you go. So that one who hears these words is puzzled and questions whether selves do exist, or if they do exist, that they exist in the highest degree in the realm of being, so that it appears abundantly necessary that selves must be unknown by human nature. Whoever speaks in this way may appear to be saying something important and may be thought of as being an extraordinary statement by remaining unable to be persuaded. Okay, there's a big ass quote, so we're going to make it stay up for a little bit longer. Make it 35 seconds. Okay, so why do we go through all that? Well, it's important to have a quote with us, to have the text with us, to have the logos with us from someone who has gone through that journey, to confirm, to direct us, to help us see. So we're not adding our own personal opinions or projections. Okay, so what are we saying? That this appearance, what are the key words we're looking for in that quote? Oh, this is so much fun. This is so good. It's like we're mining gold here. Have you ever played World of Warcraft or any of those adventure games or role-playing games in which you are a character, but you also have a skill like mining? You have like a mining skill to get minerals to apply to your weaponry. We're doing that. We're mining for gold that we can apply to level up our logos. It's so fun. So what are we looking for? Appears abundantly necessary. Hey, abundantly appears that we can't know the realm of being. And whoever speaks in this way appears, again, repetition is important. Repetition is part of the logos. It's a kind of symmetry through time. Look for it. To say something important and maybe thought of, opinion, as being an extraordinary statement. How? Remaining unable to be persuaded. What do we call that? Certainty. That's the Dunning-Kruger thing. To be certain in your ignorance may give the appearance of knowledge. So, how are we going to use that? We're doing a dialectic on what? If knowledge exists. If knowledge exists, what follows? There must be a realm of being. We have a destiny that we can reach. There is a way of going up a hierarchical order to knowledge. There is a goal at the end of the hierarchy, and it's a truth. We are made better. If knowledge exists, then it also must be good and beautiful and true, considering they are all selves, which means we are made better, we are made more good. It's also, there is we saw in our reading that there is a self in being of one, so we're made more unified. We've seen how we can use that to benefit. like Parmenides. So we're made more unified, more inclusive, more caring if we use it as Parmenides is. We can benefit. We're made more rational. It's objective. It's for everybody. It's no one's excluded. So these are positives you can say about it, but we can also say negatives. Like, what wouldn't you say? We would never, if knowledge exists, we would never say we have to exclude people. We have to kill people. We have to oppress people. Okay? This is what you can say that's true about it, what's false about it. And you can also pick something that's true and false. If knowledge exists, what can you say that's both true and false? That we can save humanity. It's true in that if it exists, we have that true hierarchy that we can apply to human development that does lead to those positive things that can potentially save humanity. But it's true in that sense, but it's also false that if we don't pick up this quest, we won't get there. So it's both true and false. It's true that it's possible, but also false that it's not necessary because we might not awaken ourselves to philosophy. So true, false, both true and false. A triad. Interesting. You can only say those three things about anything. What's true about it, what you can never say about it, what's false about it, and what's a combination of both in some way. What do you get with that? A triad to add to your triad skill tree. It's a 3. Throw it in there. Look for it. Okay? But we also have to do, if it doesn't exist, if knowledge doesn't exist, what follows? Well, we are only left with the appearance of knowledge. Certainty. People who are thought to be saying extraordinary things. And the people saying it appear to be, well, how do they, so we could say, okay, that's what it is. How does it function to others? So that's self itself, self to others. Oh, people appear to be knowing by remaining to be unpersuaded. So quote again, remember? That's how they function to others. They remain to be unpersuaded, giving the appearance of knowing. Okay, how else do they function? Well, to justify their knowingness, they have to present themselves as above or higher up, more evolved, leveled up on the hierarchy towards knowing. But if knowing doesn't exist, they have to create a bullshit hierarchy. How do they justify their position without actually having a goal? I'm knowing and I'm smarter and you should listen to me because I'm closer to God. All right? Out of the thousands of religions that existed throughout time, you've gotten to the essence of what it is. If religion is used in this way, all right? Because religion is, the word religious is based on is the principle to be bound by a saving belief. That's what religion is. It's a belief. Philosophy is different in that it's not belief. You can still be religious, but you are developing understanding. You don't have to believe that person selling you a list of opinions. You don't have to believe Socrates or Parmenides. You can develop it yourself through your own understanding. That's why it's inclusive. Otherwise, you get 100 different people with their different beliefs in their bunch of groups underneath them, fighting each other for dominance. Yeah, the story of human history. A story bathed in blood and injustice. Don't need that anymore if there is a understanding that's open to all. You don't have to believe the guy in the funny hat or the guy in the bigger tent in the cult where all the women go to sleep at night. Okay? We don't need that anymore. But this is what would follow if knowledge doesn't exist. You would have these come up, and we have had these come up. So not only can we develop an understanding of what must follow, but we can see it. We can understand human history and our future if we don't recognize knowledge exists. You will always have this. You will just have bigger and bigger guns to create that same sense of injustice. What else follows? Well, they have to justify that through a bullshit hierarchical order. Men are better because, I don't know, what do they say nowadays? There'll be reasons for it. I don't know. Find them yourself. Why are men better than women? Bigger muscles, maybe. An extra chromosome. Is that a thing? Oh, you can use religion to justify oppressing women, which is men are higher up the hierarchy, number one. And number two, you don't have to develop a true understanding of good. You can just play out your problems and therefore oppress. Oh, maybe because Eve caused sin, because we got this fairy tale from the Bible. By the way, if you look at the opening, if you read Genesis, to read it for ourselves and apply the same level of integrity we're applying to reading Parmenides, you will see that Eve didn't. Eve wasn't the liar. She wasn't the bad character in that story. You can read it or you know. But we have to ask a question. Why do they present her as the bad one? Oh, do men have all the money? Oh, and do these people want the money? Oh. So what do they have to do? Sell them a bullshit hierarchical order where you give me money and I'll tell you you're better just because you're you. You don't have to do anything. Selling beliefs. Right? People can see, I've heard a lot of people talk about having the same difficulty with a New Age spiritualism. You don't have to do anything, you just have to believe. If you believe you're going to be rich, you will make it abundance. Okay? It's very easy to sell that because you don't have to make a product. You just give them a hope. And it's very appealing because they don't have to do anything either. They don't have to go through so great a sea of logos that we're going through. They don't have to do anything. They just have to believe it. Oh, if I believe I'm getting a Mercedes hard enough, it will happen. It's also unfalsifiable. Oh, I bought your book about positive thinking and believing things, hoping things into existence, and my life is just as terrible and humanity is just as terrible as before. I want my money back. Oh, no refunds. But why not? You just didn't believe hard enough. You just didn't have enough belief. You didn't clench your fist hard enough when you were abundancing it with your positive thinking. Right, this is the scam. It's simple. It's the same thing. It's just the distortion of the logos. Now, that's not to say that visualization and imagination are bad when applied to the logos. Do we have to imagine what being is, what beauty is, what justice is when we do our dialectic? Yes. When we listen to the metaphors about the logos, the cave analogy, the master-slave analogy, do we have to use our imagination? When we set goals for being like Socrates or having a mastership of the dialectic or reaching our destiny, when we set goals like that to set plans to get into the logos, to get into philosophy, do we have to imagine the result? Do you imagine the steps involved? Yes. So it's not a problem with imagination, it's whether or not the logos is present, because the logos doesn't just end with hope. You actually understand the steps involved. Oh, these are the steps. These are the exercises of Zeno. This is how you understand how the steps fit together. These are how the steps fit together to lead up to the Parmenides dialectic. So what are they? You understand the steps. Self itself. You understand how the steps relate to each other, selves to others. You understand how to walk the steps, others to others. And you understand what will happen at the end. That's adding the logos. That's others back to self. Okay, and the 4 categories of the dialectic. We can use it everywhere because it is everywhere. It's the paradigm. It's the model. That's the difference. Take the logos out. You have what follows if knowledge doesn't exist. You could also say what follows if the logos doesn't exist. Or what happens if the beings don't have an existence in the realm of being, which includes knowledge, which includes logos, which includes, according to what we've read, beauty, justice, one and many, likeness and unlikeness, which was the first exercise. The first dialectic we do is what follows if the many beings exist, which is another way of saying if there is another dimension called the realm of being. Okay? If it doesn't, we have these terrible distortions of hierarchical orders that are based on appearance that are used to manipulate people because they don't have the logos in it, allowing billionaires to exploit people, allowing religious folk to kill people, whatever it is, whatever form of oppression is justified because billionaires are better, our religion is better, our pope is better, whatever. It's some sort of innate hierarchical thing that's in nature, which tells us we are looking for it. We need a way of justifying our tyranny. In other words, we need to find that hierarchical order. The difference is whether it's got the logos or not, whether it's bullshit to justify our problems or our ignorance, or if it's truth, which will make us better people. And we get a thumbs up. We get 2 thumbs up and we get balloons. No, we get fireworks. Cool. And we get confetti. That's the difference. So do you see the significance of doing the positive and the negative? Both categories. Do you see why Parmenides is always saying in each one of the exercises, you've got to do these 4: definition, demonstration, division, analysis. There's 4 steps: self, others, other self. For if it exists and if it doesn't. So you can see the truth and the problems that we face, that you face. You've got to understand them too. Why there's oppression, why there's all this alpha male chauvinistic bullshit, why there's always been that, why there's always been oppression of women, oppression of minorities, oppression of other groups. They always sell the same story. It's only the same story. There is a natural justification, it naturally exists and it should always exist, that blah, 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 here's a hierarchy and you're on top. No, I'm on top, but you're better than others. All right, there's a famous quote. I should pull it up. Tell a man he's better than another race, and he will give you his money. Okay, quote. Let's see what it is. Lyndon Johnson, famous quote. This is it in its essence. If you can convince the lowest white man that he's better, higher up that hierarchy that we're looking for, we just need to put the logos with it. If you tell the lowest white man he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice when you pick his pocket. That's why they sell this racism bullshit. Hell, give him someone to look down on from his place in the hierarchy, and he'll empty his pockets for you. President Lyndon B. Johnson. It's a quote that I see it sometimes. All right. So why is that profound? Because we can relate to it. But what's the understanding behind it? The logos. What? Hierarchical order of key terms. Only take out the logos and you've just lying to people. Why? Because you make money from them. How do they function? So now you've done that. So we've got our if knowledge or logos doesn't exist, what can you say about it? It's just appearance, appearing certain. Right? How do you function to others? You convince them that they're better just by not doing anything, naturally better than some minority, like the subjugated sex against women, chauvinism. A minority race, they're better than the colored people, right? That's how it functions. Self to others, then others to others. What happens in the world? People don't solve their problems. In fact, they just feel more confident in playing out their problems, and they don't do this development towards more inclusion, more unity, more compassion, more empathy, more mastership, more benefit, more understanding, more openness, more curiosity, more questions. All of these objectively good qualities that are up the true hierarchical development of the logos in human nature are all abandoned for certainty in their bullshit. The opposite of those things. More inclusive, more chauvinistic, more oppressive, more justifying of their problems. But it's not personal. It's human. Why? Because humans come in with both. We come in with problems, or we learn them at a very young age, Everyone does. It's the human problem. And we come in not knowing the truth, or rather, having forgotten it. We have to remember what we know. So we come in with a quest to do two things: purify our ignorance, our false beliefs, and develop in the adventurous quest.
You're a wizard, Harry.
We have to do both. That's the quest. Which means what? If there are people who find it easier to stop that human development by selling this Lyndon B. Johnson lie because it earns them money or gets them a good following on YouTube or whatever, then the people who end up being more chauvinistic, being more closed-minded, being more aggressive and violent towards others and not inclusive, we don't blame them. We want to help them and understand them, because they are being manipulated by someone who is just selling such an easy, attractive lie. That's why it's for everyone. There's a way of solving all human problems, even that. By doing what? Understanding the cause. Hey, if you were to wipe out all the people, you'd be wiping out everyone, because everyone has been convinced in some way. That's the story of Achilles. He was a great warrior, but he thought, oh, I don't have to solve my problems. I know I've got it all figured out because I'm chosen. My family is the best family. Everyone thinks their family is the best family. It's part of being a human baby. You need to survive. However, the people who earn a buck or gain a big following or gain fame from convincing other people they're better just from hope and not the logos, they are harming them. So this is what follows: others to others. People will act against their own best interest, reject philosophy. They'll call it empty talk. They'll call it useless, as Parmenides says, which means they won't develop the logos and the dialectic, so they won't have a method of solving their problems, removing their ignorance, removing the cause of their tyrannical behavior and their own suffering, because we do unto others what we do unto ourselves. So they'll be limited from their own removing of problems and reaching their highest excellence. Purification and perfection. The logos applied to the problems and the logos applied to truth. They will be limited from their human quest. And they will pass on their tyranny to others. They will seem believable to their kids or their staff or whoever it is. So, this is why we do what's true about it and what's false. If truth or logos or knowledge exists, if it doesn't exist, this follows and this follows. Why? Well, we can understand our problems, but also we can understand where we are as a humanity, because this text of Parmenides, understanding philosophy, isn't common. Something happened between 2,500 years ago when this conversation between Soc, Zeno, and Parmenides, Zoc, Zeno, and Parm, that sounds like a good order for lunch. I'll have the Soc, Zeno, and Parm, please. It's a good lunch order. It's also a good logos. Something happened between then and now where this was stopped. We call it the Dark Ages, right? Thankfully, we're a period of history where we have the internet and we can rediscover, reawaken it. So, in the category of if knowledge, logos, truth doesn't exist in being, what follows? Self itself, appearance. Imitation, bullshit. Self to others, they appear certain. To imitate knowledge, it's a fiction, it's an imitation. To appear knowledgeable, they're certain, closed-minded. Maybe they give the appearance of your teachers. That looks like what my dad would say. I'm voting for that guy. I'd like to have a beer with that guy. Others to others, how will people act? They will act tyrannically, they will act out their problems, and they'll be prevented from doing the work on their problems, overcoming their suffering and their own injustice, and they'll be prevented from doing the reason that they're here to do, doing the work, doing the true human quest.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
They'll be limited from doing the logos and the dialectic to solve their problems and reach their highest destiny. And the fourth category, others back to self. How will they approach knowledge? if knowledge doesn't exist in being, they'll try and become a tyrant themselves. They'll try and put themselves in that position of appearance. Maybe they'll try and establish their own hierarchy. We were oppressed people, but actually let's make up our own religion where we're the chosen people now and oppress others. Right? Ever seen that happen in history? Time and time and time again. Another fairy tale to replace the old fairy tale, which is what? Here's a new hierarchical order where we are actually the chosen people. Okay? And the cycle continues until eventually humanity either goes extinct or we realize that it does exist, which is what? Awakening to philosophy, which is what? Seeing there is a truth that exists and doing the positive dialectic on it. If logos, knowledge, truth exists, what follows? Itself. Oh, it's a realm of being. There exists another dimension that is itself intelligent and intelligible, understandable and knowable. Those two, our two buddies. Dianoia and nous, the two Greek words if you want to be fancy. How does it function to us? It creates, it emanates through the true hierarchical order, which we are seeking within our souls and within our souls. That's why that bullshit is so believable. Something about creating a bullshit hierarchical order speaks to people. All of us. I want to be told I'm good. I want to be told I'm good without even having to do anything. That's great. Pat myself on the back. But it appeals to us because we're seeking the true one, and if truth exists, then it can form a true hierarchical arrangement of humanity, of growth. We can level up, that means. How does it affect us? It gives us what we need to evolve. How does that mean? Because that's knowledge to others, us. How do we relate to others if knowledge exists? We will be more Socrates-like. We will be more Parmenides-like. We will be more inclusive, more cooperative, more rational, more friendly, more peaceful, more caring, more beneficial. We could even possibly save our planet from extinction, from destruction, and save humanity from extinction. These are the logical, necessary things that follow. That's what we've been talking about all day today. What follows? What are the consequences? Push the implications. What reality would we live in if it was the case? That's what we saw last time with Parmenides' arguments. He saw, hey, here is the definition, self itself, of your problem. Here is how it functions towards you, self to others, demonstration. By the way, here are the implications that follow, what must be necessary. That was a key word, right? When Parmenides gave his dialectic of the first hypothesis, he said, I'm only doing it because it necessarily must follow. Given what was said before, given that we're all selves here, given that the many who are ignorant and want to stop this are not around, but also given that Zeno asked for it, which is a puzzle. That's in our inventory. Why the hell does that make a difference? Why can't just Socrates just tell it because Socrates asked? Hey, it's going to be a text that's going to maybe save humanity 2,500 years later. Wasn't that good enough reason? Why does Zeno have to ask? That's in our question sack, in our inventory, as we are adventurers.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Okay, so that's what we're looking at. These are the implications, Socrates, that follows from your argument. You won't get into philosophy. You'll be disconnected from knowledge. By the way, what was his definition of his problem? The great puzzle. A lot of people think that we can't know the realm of being. Okay, here's a demonstration through the master-slave argument. Have you noticed that masters and slaves in our world are freaking terrible? But in the realm of being, a true master would care for the selfhood of his steward. He wouldn't enslave a human being. He wouldn't oppress a human being. So therefore, there's a strong disconnection between the divine, true mastership and stewardship, and our physical, lords and slaves. That's completely different. It's a demonstration through a metaphor. By the way, we've done a handy dialectic of what happens if being doesn't exist, and we've seen that oppression everywhere. A hierarchical order that is not based on the logos, but is based on some innate bullshit lie that you're naturally better because of your race or religion or whatever the hell, take away actual truth. And so what happens? Do those lords, kings, capitalists, whoever it is, care about the selfhood, the self-development of their employees, slaves, cult members? Never. It's always oppression. So we've seen why Parmenides can pick that example. He must have done this dialectic in his past. He has it with him. He can see through it and use it. He's leveled up with it. So he can say, oh, by the way, have you noticed this would be the reality if truth and logos exists? We'd have true benefit and mastership. But if you don't think, if knowledge doesn't exist for us humans, you have this, which is just the negative side of the dialectic we just did.
Wow.
So you can see him using it. What happens? Oh, you'll create bullshit hierarchical orders so that whoever's a master will just play out their problems, which will be tyrannical and awful. Call them a banker, call them a capitalist, call them a cult member, call them a politician. You just pick a name from a hat. But they're all the same in that they don't have true mastership. They don't care about the development of the self through this hierarchical development. Okay, that's a demonstration. He gave a metaphor. And then he gave the divisions. This is what follows. This is the reasoning of your argument that follows. Gods can't know us. So we're saying gods are stupid in a way. Gods can't rule us. So we're left alone. We're abandoned by the divine. We're just humans playing out our, stupid, meaningless ants being tortured. Humanity is just suffering for suffering's sake. We have no connection to the divine. So God's stupid. There is a cruelness to reality. Of course, you won't have any reason to get into philosophy if philosophy is about knowing the truth and knowledge and being better and leveling up. So these are the implications that follow. That's the section we've been focusing on yesterday and today. The implications that follow. What must the world we be in be? Which is another way of understanding the two parts. If truth exists, what must the implications be? What must that reality be? It's a what if. Marvel has a what if Spider-Man was a zombie, or what if Captain America became Batman or something. These are hypothetical what ifs. That's the two categories. What if this exists? What if it doesn't? Pushing the implications. That's what we do in philosophy. It helps us see the arguments, help us come to a conclusion. So our question is, okay, what is philosophy? Thumbs up. Give one of these. Confetti. What is philosophy? Oh, it's the development and mastery of the logos through the dialectic to grasp the realm of being, giving you understanding and knowledge, dianoia and nous, that you then apply to your ultimate goal, knowing thyself, which is beyond even being, which we saw in the first hypothesis. Okay, well, what's the implication of that? What kind of world do we live in? That's a good question. What does it say about our reality? What does it say about this physical world you're seeing with your eyes? It's not the ultimate, is it? It's not even the penultimate or second best. Wow, isn't that interesting? Isn't that curious? Isn't that wonderful? It's also consistent with every spiritual experience you can put on that hierarchical arrangement. Is an encounter of beauty as good as or less than an experience of justice? It's all the same experience, but is there depth to the realm of being? Can you go into it deeper? Which of these selfer terms are higher than the others? We started our first hypothesis with one and many, then whole and part, then limit and unlimited. Was there a reason? Is that part of the hierarchy? Is seeing everything as a wholeness greater experience of the realm of being, then seeing everything as a infiniteness. What do you think? If they're both terms, in other words, they're experiences of the realm of being or depths, aspects to the realm of being, can we see the same logos, true hierarchical order, not just in our physical world, where we see Socrates being at a stage of development, Parmenides recognizing him there, talking about his state, giving him what he needs to level up to the higher levels. We even saw in the opening, he gave a demonstration of a whole bunch of different levels, that the beings exist in themselves, that the beings have a relationship to us. So we talked about how beauty itself exists and only has a relationship to other ideas like justice. Like justice is beautiful, goodness is beautiful, and beauty is good. But there's another way of thinking that, it relates to us and we have beautiful things because it partakes in the realm of beauty. It's a different way of thinking. There's two right there. And he said, by the way, Socrates, here's your one. You think the word beauty only has a relationship to other physical things. There's no connection to the divine realm. The master-slave. Master-slaves here are nothing like master-slaves in being. So we say everything is relative to language. It's like a common agreement to say that something is beautiful. A social construct. Right? But there's another one. There's not even that. Everyone's opinion of beauty is different, so we can't even agree. So if I say the ugliest thing is beautiful, that's just as true as what you say is beautiful. Beauty is completely in the eye of the beholder. So there's a hierarchical list of arrangements of ways of perceiving beauty itself that can be applied to a person with the logos, using the dialectic, recognizing Socrates where he was. Did he make fun of him? Did he put him down? Haha, you're ignorant. You were convinced by a dummy. Haha, you deserve your fate because you're stupid. No, he said, by the way, it's a human problem. It's not personal, mate. You're Socrates, dude. It's not personal. Socrates has this problem. Hey, you have this problem? Socrates has it too. You're in good company. What is the problem? This. It's a human problem. There's a definition of the problem itself. Wait. That's the implications. This one here. Oh, we've got two quotes on screen. Okay, we just want one at a time, please. Okay, let's wait for the other one to go. This one here. If you think the selves exist in the highest degree, it will appear abundantly necessary that they must be unknown by us humans. And whoever says that may appear to be saying something important, thought of as saying an extraordinary statement, because they give this appearance of certainty, unable to be persuaded. Okay? You could say that's a definition of the human puzzle. How does it demonstrate with Socrates? Well, what does Parmenides say about Socrates when he tries to get to the cause of Socrates' personal example of this human problem? This one here. Now you are still young. You give heed. Since you are still young, haven't gone into philosophy yet. You're young in the philosophy, he said. Philosophy hasn't accepted you into her embrace yet. Because of that, you give heed to the opinions of human beings. That's how it demonstrates in your world. And then he played out the division or the arguments or the implications of that in his dialectic, where even within that division stage, he then had a definition, demonstration, division. So the logos is within the logos. So these levels are within each. It's holographic or fractal. So hey, this is a definition of the human problem. This is how it demonstrates in your world. Here are the divisions into the particulars of your problem. While doing the division step, I'm going to define the level you're on, demonstrate it through an analogy, give the division into its implications, and then we're going to conclude. So even within each stage, you can see the 4 stages, which is cool. Isn't it wonderful? It's another way of saying, within reality, there's a realm of the becoming in which follows the logos. hierarchical levels of divisions within arguments, within Socrates, within humans. The truth. But that's just a part of the whole, because you can apply the logos to the realm of being. And in the first hypothesis, we're using the logos in a unique way, still using key terms, still using them in a hierarchical order to define the one-self which is beyond even being. So can we say that reality itself, can we say that the first hypothesis, the realm of being in our physical world, would be some sort of definition, demonstration, and division? Is it a triad? Requiring us to see all of it and then synthesize it and bring it back? Is that what's true and false, and what's false? Is there a connection? Because we have two different triads. We saw a new triad today. What's true and false and what's both can be said about anything. So we can use that new triad to... Does that help us understand this triad of the one-self, being and becoming? The one-self, the realm of being in the physical world? Maybe. Try it out. You match your triads together and see if they illuminate each other. See if they... It's like rubbing two... Socrates uses this expression. Plato does. It's like rubbing two sticks together. Sometimes a spark, a new insight will come from that rubbing together. So that's why we have our skill trees. Interesting, because skill trees, two twigs on the skill tree, rub them together. This triad. Does true, false, and mixed help us understand one, being, and becoming? Maybe. I don't know. Is the one self what's true? Is being truth, but it's not the self, so it's also false? And is the world of becoming just false? I don't know. See if a spark comes. Lesser, greater, and ultimate? That's another triad. Can you rub that together? So, pushing the implications is today. Pushing the implications. What happens when you have Socrates' argument? What happens when you have the human problem? What happens to human society if it doesn't have the logos? If it hasn't awakened to true philosophy? What are the implications if you have the true name of philosophy as this? The love of wisdom, and wisdom involves the logos, dialectic, understanding, knowledge, and the one-self. If that's all aspects within wisdom, then it's not the love of opinions. It's not theories. It's not selling opinions that justify a hierarchy which makes people better than others to allow them to play out their own tyranny and cuts them off from their human quest of learning about themselves, the problems they have, and their true destiny. Implications if you name philosophy well, and if you don't. The implications if you think that there is a realm of being, and if you don't. Implications of if there is a realm of being, what does it say about knowledge, logos, and hierarchical orders? And if there isn't, that in the realm of being. The implications of both, that's the dialectic. That's the exercise. That's our imagination. That's how you can apply it to your art. Create a painting of either. The bright and the dark. The light and the dark. The truth and its distortion. The person and his reflection in the mirror. Diminished through the mirror to a lower dimension. That's what we do in philosophy. Understand the thing itself, a what if, and if it doesn't exist. But also we follow what follows, push the implications, follow the arguments. What's the conclusion? Come to a conclusion. Why? Because you can unify that conclusion and use it to benefit. That also applies to names. We're naming philosophy right. We're naming truth right. We can use it as Parmenides is. Isn't that cool? So we left off yesterday with a demonstration of this thing that we are now defining as the logos, true hierarchy, true development towards true virtues of inclusion, compassion, empathy, harmony, taking care of the environment, taking care of the human species, evolving to our destiny. This is the true hierarchical development of the logos. We're defining that as the logos. We're defining that as philosophy. But we saw a demonstration of that in the first hypothesis. where Parmenides defines his hypothesis of the one-self in a kind, empathetic, beneficial way of the dialectic with Aristotle. And he says, are you with me? Let's bring up the text. I think this is the one here. Yes. So, all of our arguments of 36 pages so far. Accordingly then, the one of the one-self in no way participates of ousia, which was being. Accordingly then, the one in no way whatsoever is. So we've got being, ousia, and is tied together. Accordingly then, neither is it in such a way as to be one. So again, ousia, is, and being, to be. So the one of the one-self is beyond ousia, beyond being. So beyond that use of the word is, which was our dialectic, if knowledge and truth and logos and the hierarchical order exist in truth. The one that is the one-self is beyond that. Because if it was to be, and by being, it would be participating in ousia. And according to reason, therefore, this reason, the one is neither that one that exists, nor is existence at all. If we must trust, some trust involved in the development in such a logos. Okay, I dare say so, says Aristotle. But could any non-being of self, am I just saying it doesn't exist, so it's like illusion, fiction? Is it that negative dialectic we just did? That there is no knowledge, there is no truth, there is no being, it's just appearance and convincing people and selling people on lies about fake hierarchy so they can justify their tyranny and distract them from their true quest to remove their problems and discover their destiny? Is that what I'm saying about the truth of the self? No, it's not non-being, it's not that dialectic, it's not the negative. Maybe we'll get into that in our later hypotheses. If the one isn't, hypothesis 6, 7, 8, and 9, those four, if the one doesn't exist. But not here. So it's not that. Okay, so it's not existing, and it's not a one that exists. It doesn't participate in ousia. But it's not non-being. So, conclusion. You can't, in that kind of a way, you can't give it a name. But we just saw today how important names were. We need to name it properly. We need to name philosophy properly. We need to name knowledge, logos, hierarchical orders need to be named properly. Otherwise, this terrible stuff will happen. But he's saying you can't name it. That's a puzzle. One, what kind of a name can we give it? Because we have to give it a name. Like here, he's saying one is. He is saying one is, but then he's saying there's another way of thinking where you see that it's not one nor is. So both can be true. So this is a true, both true and false kind of thing. It's both true and false to say that one is. Because in one way that you have to solve, we have to solve as adventurers.
You're a wizard, Harry.
We're saying it is the one of the one-self. But in another way, it isn't. Because it's not a one that exists and it's not existence at all. It doesn't participate in being or ousia. It's not in that realm of being. Okay? So both true and false. We've got to find out how. By the logos. This word here. So in a similar way, it doesn't have a name, but it also does. But in what way? Question one. Because we can't just reject names because we saw how important it was from our own dialectic exercise. Isn't it cool that we're benefiting from our own work? It's ours. You have it. Take it with you forever, beyond even this lifetime. That's a cool thing about philosophy. So, what kind of a name? The one of self of the one that is the one self doesn't, you can't say it has a name. You can't attribute to it name. Nor logos. Question 2. Well, we just did a logos, so what does that mean? Nor knowledge, but we're supposed to know thyself. What does that mean? Nor perception or opinion. Okay, I'm happier with that, but maybe there is a way of having a perception or opinion about it. If we're trusting the logos, is that a kind of opinion? I'm putting them in many questions. I'm happy to say that there's no perception or opinion because opinions are about the physical world, and of course it's not that. And no perception. Normally we talk about perception or physical senses, but you can keep them as questions if they're yours. I'm hesitant, but I'll throw them in there. But I'm down with the big three. What kind of name is the self? What kind of logos is it? What kind of knowledge? We said those two things, understanding and knowledge. Maybe that's part of wisdom. Both together. We said that you can get into philosophy through love of understanding or logos, or a love of experience. That's knowledge. And it's two together as philosophy. So what are we going to get rid of both when we reach the ultimate? The two things that got us in, the two things that were our understanding and our verification, logos and knowledge, we're going to throw that away? Of course not. Then what are we saying? What kind of name is the one-self, that is? What kind of logos and what kind of knowledge? Also, it can't be named, so you can't attribute it to a thing, so in its definition, but also in its functioning or our relationship to it. You can't say it can be named or be spoken of or be opined of or be the object of knowledge, nor do the real beings have a perception of self. That's not likely from our reasoning. Therefore, is it possible that these conclusions have to be in this way about the one? Okay, he's just defined it, but he's using it to benefit someone. So he's asking it as a question. Questions are important for us. So what happens? He asks it as a question. Is he done? Aristotle says, to me at least, it certainly does not appear in this way, to be in this way. He doesn't get it. It doesn't appear to be that. How could it be? I don't know. Like me too, Aristotle. Our translator gives his own quote here. On the one hand, it appears Aristotle is indeed following the reasoned account of Parmenides, sure. But on the other hand, he refused to believe, let alone trust, the same reasoned account. But how can anything possess anything if first of all it does not possess being or existence? How about the very cause of Ousia herself is transcendent in dignity and power, the Republic? Okay, so we have a quote here from the Republic that we could jump into to see that quote to help us better understand the first hypothesis. We can do that. That'll be fun. But before we do that, we have to see that it's given us huge definition as a kind of division into its parts. But Aristotle doesn't follow, so that would provide some sort of necessary reason to go on. Hey, do you get it? How can the one that is be neither one nor is? If we're having a logos about it. By the way, I said we're having a logos about it, but it doesn't have logos, nor can we do logos to it. What? Well, what can you say about logos? Well, it's beyond knowledge if knowledge is being. But we have to know thyself. What? By the way, it's important to have names, right? Sure. It can't have a name, nor can we name it. What? You get it? No. End of the first hypothesis. Therefore, we're stuck, we're puzzled. What do we do if someone's puzzled in a dialectic? Do we tell them to go take a hike? Do we just fill them for hope? Oh, it doesn't matter. You don't have to understand. You're just better because you're a philosopher and philosophers are cool. Oh, you're an alpha. Being a philosopher makes you alpha, so you don't have to, just don't worry about understanding. You're just better. So just walk around as though you're better than everyone. That's what it means to be a philosopher. Do we do that? Do we pump them full of hope to manipulate them, to get them to like us? No. If they're stuck and don't understand, we go on to the next step to bring them along through the true hierarchical order, through the true series of development, through what? Logos. We have logos so we don't have to leave people out in the lurch, have to abandon or exclude them, or pump them full of bullshit hope which will hurt them, be against their interests. It's not true benefit. We don't have to do that. We can do what? Go on to the second hypothesis. So these are all reasons why we're going on to the second hypothesis. Good reasons. And why we're not going into the negative. And we can do that. We can see why one kind of solution, keep going into the next hypothesis. You're stuck on this kind of weird one is, well, let's go on to the other ways of what if one does exist? One is as though it exists in being. Let's follow those. There's 4 of them. Oh, and of course you can do the positive and the negative. What if it doesn't exist? So there's 4 of them. So we're seeing why it's better to do this good thing, because we did that exercise of pushing the implications. What follows? What results? So we know why we're choosing this one over the negative, filling them full of hope or whatever. Because we've seen what happens to society, what happens to individuals, what happens to our world, what will happen to our planet, what happens to the human species if we go down that other way that we see other people do. Because we've understood it together through the logos by pushing the implications. What follows? What must the world be if that's the case? And what must the world be if the other one's the case? And what can the world be if we go that other way? We're at a crossroads. Humanity is at a crossroads. You are at a crossroads. We all are. And the choice is simply logos or not. I mean, it's that simple, which is amazing. I mean,
Wow.
in one way, it's just one word, so it's simple and obvious to us, but it's only obvious to us because we've done all that work and reflection. So what are we doing? Mountains are now mountains and rivers are rivers, and it's simple and obvious, but we had to go through that process. That's that saying. When I started in philosophy or Taoism, rivers were rivers, mountains were mountains. When I got into it, rivers were no longer rivers and mountains were no longer mountains. But then when I saw it, when I saw the Tao, what we would say in philosophy, when I saw the Logos, rivers were once again rivers and the mountains were mountains. Simple, obvious, true, clear, but we can function through it now. We can see it, see what was there the whole time, but in a higher way. So we can say, what's the crossroads of humanity? Oh, it's just simple. It's either Logos or not. What are the implications? Oh, you're interested in the implications of what follow? Oh, that's cool. That's what I love too. We just did a whole big thing on that. Human destruction, human misery, internal suffering, perpetuating a cycle of suffering and violence in your own life to those who listen to you, especially if you appear to be saying something wise, appear to be knowing certainty. Yeah, that's the implications. Oh, they're all freaking terrible. Or the Logos. What's the implications of that? Oh, good stuff like inclusion, benefit, mastership, empathy, harmony, beauty, justice, goodness, self-one, self-many, self-likeness, self-infinity, all that good stuff. Wow. What do you say, Owen?
Wow.
Yeah, I agree. Owen.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. Again, obvious, but only because we've gone through the work. So, have we gone through enough work on the first hypothesis to see the self, obviously? If you have, well done for you. If we haven't, well, we're on par with Aristotle here. It might not be clear to us. How can we say it has no logos when it has a logos? And logos is our way as well. And we had the logos of the first hypothesis. How can we say there's no knowledge of it, or we can't have knowledge of it, or it has no knowledge? It has no knowledge, so attributed, or can be an object of knowledge, can be done to it. So we can't do knowledge to it. We can't say it has knowledge, but we are supposed to know thyself. And what about name? Same question. The one that is that neither is one nor is. So what do? We keep going. Keep the conversation alive. It's a process. You're not born knowing. So all these people who think, oh, you know what would be easier? Just to act like we knew everything right from when I was little. Walk around like cock of the walk, like I'm super certain. I'll get followers. Why? Because I'll just imitate what they think it means to be knowing. And I'll give them an out. I'll just sell them in a hierarchy that makes them better, and they'll buy me, and I can just, they'll buy what I sell. All right? That's the negative. We see the implications of that, so we choose the positive, and we keep going. We're not born knowing. It's a process. It's a conversation. It's a dialogue. Life is a dialogue. That dialogue happens through the structure of the dialectic, through key terms of the selfer terms that have an existence in being, that leads to being itself and culminates beyond that to this one that is. Life is that conversation. We call that whole thing the Logos. If you reject it, Cancer. Cancer is a rejection of all of those negative things. Put it in one big category. Badness. Cancer. Not evil, because that has too many other connotations, but badness. Anti-logos. Humanity is a quest or a conversation on the logos. So what are we going to do? Keep going. We're going to jump into the second hypothesis and see what Parmenides does with this puzzle, with this problem. Get into the second hypothesis. Keep it alive. Isn't that cool? Isn't that interesting? Have we seen a lot today? Have we seen the implications of seeing the implications? The implications of implications? We're getting that weird way of speaking that Parmenides has. It's one is, but neither one nor is. We're seeing the implications of the implications. We're seeing the human quest. We're seeing the significance of the logos. Because we put our dialectic into action, we saw what would happen if we don't do the dialectic. If we don't put the logos on hierarchical orders. We still seek it. We're seeking it. We want to understand. We need a reason to justify our behavior. We look for justice. But if justice is defined as everything is in its right place within a hierarchical order moving towards the ultimate, then we can't just be bad and be okay with it. We'll find a way of justifying whatever we want to do, which is nothing other than a hierarchical order without the logos. Justifying your injustice. Ignorance is the reflection of wisdom. Vice is the distorted reflection of virtue. Isn't that interesting? So it's not a good versus evil. It's a reflection with or without the logos. So you could say, well, think about it this way. You look at yourself in the mirror. It's not evil. Your two-dimensional reflection in the mirror isn't evil because it's not you, but it lacks things that are important. It lacks what? Depth. It lacks a whole dimension. It's 2D. But also, there is some distortion. You hold up your right hand and the reflection holds up its left hand, so it's fundamentally wrong. But what else can you say? What else is not in your mirror reflection? Your reflection into the negative, into the reflection into the lower dimension, you say. Intelligence, life, will. Your reflection doesn't have will. Reflection doesn't have intelligence, doesn't have vitality or life. Equally so, we can see this is not a good versus evil game. It's simply a reflection into its lesser. So what do we say is missing in the negative? Being. That's why we do the what if the idea in being doesn't exist in being. Well, you're taking out something. You're removing that dimension of eternality, that dimension of intelligence, that dimension of truth, that dimension of knowledge. And key, you're removing the dimension of logos. Self-logos is one of those ideas. That applies to the one-self in a curious way as well, like knowledge does. So it's not a good versus bad, it's a truth versus distortion, which misses out being and the logos. Knowledge and dianoia. Logos and knowledge. Name logos and knowledge. So all we need to do is throw them back in. Is it going to be easy work? Well, we'll see what happens when we throw it into the second hypothesis, when we talk about being itself. But when we're in the first, which is beyond being, it's not as straightforward as we thought. I mean, it's what the heck kind of knowledge is it? What heck kind of logos? What the heck kind of name? So yeah, if you remove being, we said it's not non-being. If you remove being, all those terrible disasters, those kinds of different cancers, cancer as a metaphor, not just physical, but in every aspect of our psyche and our species and the whole, follow from non-being. So it's not that, but it's not being either. It's beyond being. The one of the one-self is beyond being. So we're not removing logos, knowledge or name. We're finding the ultimate. Do we get it? No. Well, let's go on to the second hypothesis and see what what it would be if the one does exist. Because we're stuck. Maybe understanding that, which is kind of like, so we were understanding the greater by also doing a dialectic on what if it doesn't exist. If being exists, what follows? The implications. If being doesn't exist, what follows? Understanding the distortion helped us gain more significance about the greater. In seeing how it plays out tragically in human cultures and groups and things, we saw more about the significance of the greater. Oh, it causes tyranny? Well, what's the opposite of tyranny? True mastership. Oh, we've seen more. We can add that to our dialectic of the greater. You can use one to shed light on the other, just like we're rubbing together our skill trees. Here's a triad, lesser greater whole, here's a triad, being the one. Can you use one to understand the other? Rub them together, create a spark, shed light, insight? Yeah. So we did that with if logos and truth and knowledge exists, and if it doesn't, we saw more from both by rubbing them together. That's why Parmenides says you got to do both. But here we said there's the one that is, the one that doesn't is, but also there's the one self which is beyond both. And we're stuck. Aristotle is stuck too. So maybe in the same way we rub this one against this one to see more, maybe we can rub both the one that is and the one that isn't, non-being, against the one of the one self to see more about our ultimate. Maybe we can rub two sticks against the ultimate to see more in it. Wow. Come on, Owen.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Yeah, maybe we can. The same way we rubbed our logos and understanding of the dialectic we got from the first hypothesis back against the opening, and we saw all this more. We saw all this extra things, all these more insights. Rubbing sticks together. Someone says, hey, what's philosophy? Oh, easy. It's rubbing sticks together. Oh, yeah, cool. Okay, they won't understand that because it's a metaphor. They're going to unpack the metaphor. But yeah, that's what we're doing. Rubbing sticks together. You could say rubbing understanding and knowledge together to go beyond both, or the ultimate of both. Rubbing what is against what isn't, what is and against what if it is and what if it isn't, rubbing that together. But maybe we're going to rub the one that is of the second hypothesis together with everything we carry with us in our inventory about the one of the is, the one that is of the one self. Maybe we'll rub that against the one that is of the second hypothesis to see more about both. And we can level up. Cool. Sound fun? Are you with me?
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
Thank you, Gandalf. I hope you find that exciting. I hope you find that cool. And I hope that you'll join me for that adventure. See you soon.